An hour and 22 minutes. That is how long this first episode of Oshi no Ko is. And throwing aside my critic, throwing aside my reviewer sense of self, and just looking at this as an anime fan, as an enjoyer of anime itself and manga, this has to be one of the best premieres I have seen in a very, very long time. As someone that has read this original source, and someone going in, when I started literally this episode, I started, watching it, I knew probably where this first episode would end. I was under a really good impression of just, the ending of it, what cliffhanger would be left on. I know it was going to send waves through the anime community, and I know for a fact, I haven't looked, but I know for a fact the anime community is heavily discussing this episode of Oshi no Ko, just for the sheer quality that the first episode had to offer. And even as someone that knew the story beats, knew what to expect, knew, for instance, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched the episode, I recommend you go watch the episode, knew about this final scene with Ai and how she dies, to just everything about this phenomenal moment of her expressing how to actually say she loves someone, and those final moments of her holding her children as she passes on. It's just some of the best piece of voice acting I've heard in years. FYI, the voice actor of Ai for this episode is the VA for Amelia and Megumin, aka Megumin from Konosuba, Amelia from Re:Zero. And I have to say, she voiced her heart out in this scene. It is just, no words I say, could describe the majesty of just how phenomenal this scene is, just from a voice acting perspective alone. That's not including the art and animation, how hard the animation team went in, and then the music composition as well went in for this scene. But just in general, just the VA work alone for this scene is just, it's enough for me to spend a long time talking about and kind of discussing just the inner moments of this, how it really conveys Ai as a person in these moments from seeing her journey throughout this entire hour and 22 minute episode. But one of the big details that I really want to say that stunned me about this is just how much better it really is than the manga. And let's discuss that. I've had this conversation here and there over the years about just how, oftentimes there is anime that does surpass its original source, either the manga or light novel. But as I always say when I make this discussion, it's a rarity. It doesn't happen often. And the reason for that is because, obviously, some studios have either production issues, they have to cut corners, there's CGI thrown in, just different things. And sometimes the art's just too good, it cannot be replicated in an anime format. Berserk is a good example of this. So when you think about just anime in general, oftentimes anime does not surpass its original source, because that's just how it is most of the time. But in terms of what Oshi no Ko is about, for instance, if you think about just the synopsis, looking aside or pushing aside this final sequence that is just very emotional, and we look at what this first episode was trying to convey with its own kind of self-contained story, it was trying to let us see the dark cruelties of the entertainment industry. For instance, what it means to actually be someone on front, center, and stage of, let's say, an idol or an actor, a director. We get to see kind of some darkness to that, even with child acting within this first episode, just getting to see kind of how children have to act within these situations, even though it's not necessarily their fault. They start at a young age, and they develop this attitude or pride, and then it obviously hurts their career later on in life. We see a lot of elements of just darkness within the entertainment industry with this. That's not even getting into Ai as a character and how throughout this episode, the main point is her hiding her overall relationship, or hiding the fact that she has 2 kids, and, she was someone that, is technically kind of not meant to be an idol anymore. Because in Japanese fans' point of view, in Japan, an idol shouldn't have a boyfriend, girlfriend, should not have, kids, etc. If they do it, it ruins their entire career. That's real. You can look it up. It really does happen. That is legit. And so this kind of, showcases that overall side of the industry in a very dark way, while also having a very engaging story with some very cutesy moments as well, with throwing in some fantasy elements on top of that with the, overall concept of reincarnation. I think that overall, when you just take a look at the way way this story is and presented, at least when it was in the manga, it makes a lot of sense why it would come to life in the anime and honestly surpass its original source if given proper passion. Because obviously the whole point of it is kind of about the voices, the characters conveying their feelings through the voice and the way they move, etc. And stuff like this can only benefit, from good art and animation and voice acting. So when you really take a hard look at what this first episode has to offer, it makes a lot of sense why those words ring really true about it surpassing its original source. Now, let's get into some nitty-gritty stuff, okay? Let's start from the very beginning. Let's just talk about how this series kind of tries to convey, what is going on within its story. We get introduced to this character, Ai, which, upon first impressions, when you see the way this story is conveyed, you assume that she's going to be kind of like the main character. That's at least what it seems like. I mean, obviously, we follow her two kids and all that, and they get to kind of discuss Ai and all that, their mother, and how she is doing in showbiz and all this, and we can assume that eventually maybe the spotlight would, shift to those two. Yeah, we could assume that. But we definitely thought, at least many probably thought, watching this, if you're an anime only, that I would be the main character. We're following her journey of dealing with the difficulties of showbiz, entertainment, being an idol, all this type of stuff, while trying to maintain a kind of a, normal life, so to speak, with her kids, and keep them a secret as well. That alone, that plot alone, is enough to really just write a whole manga about. Like, seriously, take a moment to think about it, okay? The writer of Oshinoko did not need to go that hard and do this little twist at the end. Like, they didn't. When you really think about how far they need to go, they literally could have wrote an entire story about just I having two kids, trying to raise them, and maintain this life. That's literally all it needed. We didn't need a death scene or anything like that, but we got that, which spiced up the plot even more, obviously. But the point is that this could have told a very unique story, and it makes me wonder if there ever is, like, maybe a what-if story or a side story spinoff or something. What would happen if, let's say, I didn't get murdered at the end of the episode? How would of the story been different, so to speak? But getting back on point, though, is that with the little twist at the end, it kind of sets the stage for more of the story, of kind of like, who was the father of these two kids? Why did he want I murdered? But on top of that, like, after everything, after all this time, why did he decide to get rid of I after such a long year gap between the first attempt and then the second attempt? It makes you wonder those questions. Now, one thing that we do need to dive into as well is the actual plot change, or the direction of it. Because of, obviously, the way the story shifts at the end of the episode, we could definitely agree that now it's more of a revenge plot. For instance, our main male character now has a purpose. Like, he had no purpose when his, mother died, or I died, and that was the only reason he wanted to live this new life. Now that she's gone, his only purpose now is to find out who the father is and get rid of him, so to speak. Why did he do all of this? Because technically in his previous life, he was murdered as well, pretty much by the same guy. So it's just like, it all kind of comes together, and it's just like, why? Why go to such extremes? But yeah, the plot has obviously shifted into revenge. And even though some might not like that overall aspect, I think that people will like it because of the delivery of the scene. And if you were one of those individuals that were not spoiled, and I really hope a lot of you weren't, but if you're one of those individuals that were not spoiled and you got to this moment, this scene, hell, even as someone that knew what was happening, okay? I've read the manga, this scene hit me. Like, it hit me. I started tearing up. And, like, legit, I knew what was coming. But the fact it hit me that hard, I cannot imagine anime-onlys and their overall attachment to Ai as a character, and when this happens, it's like a knife getting stabbed in your heart, and you're like, really? And then obviously you're going to want to side with Aqua and Ruby and the whole play of wanting to get vengeance. That's definitely what your feelings are probably going to be. So I think that the overall presentation and the way this is presented in story form, especially in anime, is fantastic to kick the plot off, because it's like, when you think about how much content was covered here, okay? This is the first 10 chapters of Oshinoko. Like, that's what the first episode covers. And this is the scene in chapter 10. And I think that, overall, when you think about it, they would have done this as a properly paced series. Like, if they would have done it like, a 20-minute episode, this would have been like the 5th episode this would have happened. So imagine just the overall weight of sitting week by week watching this and all that, week by week, and then that scene happens. It would shock people. But I do think that, in a way, the way they presented this first episode was smart for two key reasons. For one, it doesn't try to trick people into thinking that it's something it's not. But on top of that, it kind of stops people from spoiling things. Because the main thing that's going to get people for spoilers is definitely this final scene. And the fact that it's in the first episode, I think, is good, because that means that nobody can be spoiled at this point if they watch it. Like, if they just sit and watch the episode they just discovered, or whatever streaming service like High Dive here, they'll be like, oh, wow, that's crazy, and then, probably watch the second episode. So I do think that the way the first episode was handled was the best way to handle spoilers, but also just to handle the overall direction of where the story actually would go. Now, besides that, I want to talk about the music, okay? So, this was released alongside of the episode today. This is the official music. For instance, we see a few times throughout, this episode where Ai's doing her idol show and she's singing a song and all that. You see it throughout this episode like twice or three times. This is the song that was released, and you can look it up for yourself. Here's the title and all that. But basically, this is a full music video they made with the animation that you don't see in the episode, but this is special for that. And the overall song, like, when you listen to it, you're gonna be like, wow, this sounds good. But if you look at the lyrics, the final parts of the lyrics reference the final moments with Ai as a character. I finally said it. This is definitely not a lie. I love you all. Like, these lyrics are just straight up her singing to her children. And I think that this is a very beautiful way and nod through the lyrics of just kind of how I felt about Aqua and Ruby as her children. I think that there's nice little sad nods in there and stuff, and that this music video really does put, like, the icing on the cake or the cherry on top, because it really goes so well with the emotional moment at the end of the episode, especially when you see the scene where, like, she runs towards her kids, grabs them, and as she grabs them, she just disappears, and they're much older now. I think that this is beautiful. This is a very beautiful sequence of events with this official music video for Oshi no Ko, and whoever did this, like, completely, like, the animation, everything, fantastic job to them. They did really good. But, yeah, overall, first episode of Oshi no Ko, it has a lot of funny moments, a lot of sad moments, a lot of just great moments overall that's going to blow people away. The eyes as well. Like, there's just so many moments I could just sit here and talk about for hours. There's little funny moments like this. Just legit, Oshi no Ko is definitely a passion project, and I don't think anyone necessarily could deny that, especially with just the presentation of the first episode. I'm gonna obviously continue watching it because I'm a fan of the manga, and the anime has definitely made this even better than the manga in my personal opinion. So if you're wondering if you should read ahead, at least from what I'm seeing right now, you shouldn't. Stick with the anime. It's really good, and it's clear that they want this project to be fantastic. So that's my 2 cents on the matter. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video, do leave me a comment down below. Leave me a like. It does help me out a lot. And with that, be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out.